Kory Mitchell.
Wright.
Hi there, this is Travis Barnes. Kory and Aaron flew down to Louisville to hang out with me on July 31st, 2016. And it had been so many years since we were in the same room together, or same city for that matter, that I thought it would be fun to sit down and talk about a bygone era in Sioux City music and talk about their bands, Sister Knuckles and Bluefinger. So here you go. Enjoy. I don't know. I'll start with you, Kory. Do you have any favorite bands that were coming through back at that time that influenced your music style? Because you ended up, getting into a band. Any bands of note that you really liked that came through Sioux City back then?
I think the strongest memories I have of that time were the Dog-Faced Hermans, which is one of the most sort of epic live musical experiences I can remember.
But they were very, they had a really cool rhythm section, and seemed like they were kind of up there having fun, but they were just kind of, there was a lot of intensity that went along with that.
And Helmet. I think, those two bands brought such intensity to King's Court. And the memories of King's Court, sort of the smoky, sweaty, sticky floor, those memories were extremely important to me in my youth, and were definitely an important part of my growing up.
And I would say too that another Nation of Ulysses came through there, and they were, Washington D.C. band, and that was another one that was really just a great show, and it was just kind of nonstop intensity.
What about Trenchmouth? I think you guys were both heavily influenced by them, weren't you, Kory?
Yeah, in fact, when we started playing music, I wrote a letter to Trenchmouth in Chicago. And back then, they were, I think, traveling quite a lot. And so they probably didn't check their mail very often. But I had sent a letter to their P.O. box. And months after the fact, they sent me a letter back. And basically, the letter that I wrote was saying, we think you kick ass and we want to play a show with you. And luckily we were able to do that. We were able to get a show with them. I think that was King's Court. But
well, that would have been our first show.
That was our first show. Okay.
You guys' first gig was opening for Trenchmouth. That's kind of a cool thing because they were, I don't know, had they reached their Sioux City popularity? Because a lot of bands came through, and the first time or two they might not have been big, but then I remember later on Trenchmouth had a huge following, kind of similar to Magnolias and some of those other bands that just had a huge draw. What was it, a big crowd for you guys' first show?
That's kind of hard to remember. I think at that point any crowd would have been a big crowd, because we would just play in our friend's basement, in Rick's basement. But in Trenchmouth, I think they had played at least one show before that in town, and I didn't make it, so I remember hearing about that show and just hearing about this incredible band that I missed, and that the singer was just playing these congos and doing all this percussion, and that he requested that the crowd please not smoke in the front row. And I thought, well, wow, these guys sound great, and they were kind of became like a perennial band in town that would play, and I think that their popularity just kind of kept growing, and then they would release an album and another one, and it was fun to get into a band like that where every couple times a year or whatever it was, you would see them live, and then they would have a new album out, and they right up until I think they stopped playing together. They played at a show not long after they went on to their own things. And yeah, but that show was just great because I remember the first time walking into the back and they were just finishing with sound check, and the drummer Fred was just still he was just up there playing drums. I think the sound check was done, and we were just standing there watching him like, this is awesome. This guy's a great drummer, So that was just such a fun experience.
Let me add to that. So obviously all this stuff's hazy because it's been 25 years, but I think it was a pretty packed show. I mean, I remember, number one, I mean, we have pictures of that show because for us it was this important, moment. So we felt like rock stars, even though we were in this sort of shitty basement of a shitty old building. And so we took pictures of it, and I remember seeing these pictures of people crammed all the way to the back, kind of standing against the back wall. And it was just so smoky and so sweaty in there. But the other memory of that experience was sort of that weird back room where the bands got to hang out. And so there was a sort of a coming of age moment hanging out in like the shitty back room, but it felt like, that's where rock stars would go or whatever. So kind of bizarre when you look back on it, like how sort of, I don't know, it's somewhat insignificant, that you're in this back room of this shitty old building, but at the time it felt like the greatest thing in the world. And it was a great show. We had a great time. A lot of fun.
I want to take a couple minutes and play one or two of the songs in their entirety. Maybe I'll play one here and then one at the end of the interview. But one of the things that always impressed me about Sister Knuckles and then later Bluefinger was the level of sophistication that these guys had. They're just a bunch of high school dudes, but playing in a basement. But they had an incredible amount of polish and tightness to the music, so you could tell that they were working hard on it. So I'm going to play Truck Driver, and then later on I'll play one at the end. One of the things I remember about, well, it was Sister Knuckles first, then Bluefinger, but you guys had a huge support system of friends. And Kory, you went to South Sioux High School, and Aaron went to East. And like being in high school, I went to North, and then I later transferred to West. But it was like there were different factions when you're that age.
I got integrated in somehow as like I think around 15, and mostly it happened through skateboarding. Being from South Sioux, there wasn't much of a scene at all. I mean, there wasn't much of a music scene, or there were a few of us that skated. But somehow I got plugged in with Matt Mason over in at East, and I sort of got plugged into this group with Britt and Aaron and Rick and a whole bunch of other guys and basically it started through skateboarding. So I think you're right. I think in general we weren't integrated that well, but I was super lucky that I was able to find some guys to hang out with and skate with, and eventually, I mean, it turned into a music thing. So yeah, that's all I can remember.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, the city, as far as growing up, whether you went to this school or that school, I mean, yeah, it was a little, I mean, looking at it now, it's a small city, but, when you're at that age, you're like, wow, that's all, this guy goes all the way across town, or, they're a little different over there, the way they act or whatever, but, ultimately you see a guy walking around with a Cramps shirt, and he looks like you, or he looks like one of your friends, and he has like a similar hairstyle, or ripped up jeans, or, kids were wearing like combat boots and stuff back then. So, I mean, you see people that you just ultimately that's kind of, I think King's Court kind of became, one of those things where, you feel like, well, I felt like, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. I belong with this crowd, because I didn't, I guess I didn't feel it, with other groups or whatever with different interests at school, like which would primarily been like sports and things like that, which is nothing against that, but I didn't get into it.
I think, the other thing we forget now, especially, those of us who skated, I mean, there was sort of a weird persecution against people who skated, which is bizarre to think of now because it's such a mainstream activity with, where I live in Denver, there's an awesome skate park right in the middle of the city. We have it in Sioux City now. I mean, but at the time, all of us sort of had to hang out together, sort of as a way to protect one another, because, you'd have some morons chasing you and trying to beat the shit out of you, and you had cops chasing you because you were, fucking up the handrails or whatever. So it was sort of a weird community that banded together out of necessity. And like Aaron said, I mean, you gravitate towards each other because, I mean, you need a support system when you're that age. So it was great to have that in Sioux City. And I think King's Court in a lot of ways embodied that, because it was just this special place. And you even saw that with bands like Trenchmouth and Helmet that would come there from big cities and play in this special place with such intensity. And I mean, the crowds were just so into it because we were so starving for that kind of an experience. So I think it was a special time, it was a special era, and it's not one that I've seen since.
Yeah, I don't think it could be duplicated. It was just a strange ecosystem that all came together. When you guys got together, you met everybody through Matt Mason. Aaron, were you just like high school friends with Rick and Britt? Is that how you guys kind of like formed the first band?
Yeah, I think those guys knew each other. Like Britt and Rick were friends, and I knew who they were, and so somehow I penetrated their group of friends. So I ended up hanging out with them, and eventually somebody was selling a bass guitar, and I had interest, so I bought it, and I guess was persuaded to try to play with do something with Britt, and he would write songs and then try to teach me, and So we tried to start a band with another guy named Deke, and then Rick ended up joining, or whatever. I mean, I don't think it was any, it just happened. So I don't really remember exactly how, but yeah. So, and then we just started playing, and it's probably good for me because we all skateboarded, but I knew that I wasn't any good at that, and it probably wasn't going to get any better. So it's good that I had another activity to try to, get better at.
When you guys would make music, who was you said originally you and Britt were writing stuff together, but was the creative powerhouse eventually Rick? I mean, that question's kind of leading because I jammed with him a few times. But is that when you guys would write songs for the band, like who usually came up with stuff first, or was it a lot like a jam session collaboration?
I mean, I seem to remember Rick kind of having sort of like a key piece of the song, and it kind of started with Rick, and then the band would just sort of jam in his basement, and that basement was another key part of this equation. Rick's house, and anyone who's ever spent time with Rick, and I think Rick lives there now, doesn't he? I think he took it over from his parents, but and at the time, I mean, it was just, talk about an ecosystem. I mean, sitting in Rick's shitty ass bedroom upstairs with cigarette butts floating in liquids, smells that only we experienced, and then that basement, like hard walls with spray painted figures of, I guess, all of us. I don't remember who was on the walls, but there were spray painted pictures of the band on the walls. So
kind of like you're under a bridge or something, and there's just stuff scribbled and faces and stuff,
and just hard sounds coming off those sort of cinder block or brick walls or whatever they were down there. But I remember, Rick typically would sort of come up with a riff or a melody of some kind, and then we would just kind of jam from there. Rick had a lot of talent and was always pushing himself to come up with new sort of new stuff and weird new ways. I think for me, he was always like a major driving force in the music.
When you guys, what was the lineup during Sister Knuckles?
Well, I think it was me, Rick, Britt. And then those two. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so they both played guitar. So we had two guitar players. Yeah. And then Deke was on drums, and obviously I was on bass, and Kory was singing. So at that point, I would say too that that was kind of like Britt and Rick kind of becoming a creative partnership as far as I guess songwriting and stuff like that, and ultimately I think that Rick was kind of the band leader in a way, as far as the music, but that everybody kind of had input in their own way, I think.
When did Matt come into the picture? Was that a year later, or how far into you guys' band did that happen?
I honestly don't really remember how all that evolved. I mean, all of a sudden, we had Matt, and Ronfelt somehow popped in there, but I don't remember. I don't remember how it all even happened. I mean, I think it sort of. Go ahead.
We were in school, and we were dealing with all that kind of stuff, and so I think that at a certain point, I think with Deke, I think that he was a great drummer, and we were all friends, but I just think that he kind of was all over the place as far as his interests went, and he just kind of wanted to do other stuff, and we Matt Sightsinger was playing in another band, and we just, some of us met him or whatever, and we had contact with him, and somehow we swayed him to come play with us. And so he became our drummer. And then I think with and then Ron Felt was another guy that grew up locally, and I don't even know where he came into the he's Ron Felt, so he just showed up and then and then started playing, and that's just how it worked. So
What band was Matt in? Was it Strychnine, or I can't remember?
this I almost said Descendants. It was it was the Delinquents. Yeah, and they had that, their real crowd pleaser was that Footballs for Fags, which was, a fun attempt at kind of illustrating the tension between, people like ourselves and a high school football captain or whatever, so it was really funny, and they were great.
I think I don't remember the singer's name for the Delinquents, but like the first show I played at King's Court with Distorted Fantasy, I was shaking like a leaf. I looked like a little baby. I was about to cry. And I just remember making it through that 45-minute set, and we had like a huge crowd there, but I was so nervous, and I just kept looking down at, I forget the singer's name, but he was like, Aaron, yeah. He was staring up at me, like trying to give me affirming vibes, like, it's going to be okay, because he'd played before that, he'd had shows before I started playing, but I'll always remember that like nice little gesture of him just staring up and looking. Wow. And I think I got they had a tape out. I don't remember. I do remember the Footballs for Fags song. I don't remember some of the other ones. They had kind of a cool sound. Yeah. But you guys, like, your stuff kind of evolved from what I remember, Sister Knuckles to Bluefinger. It's like you almost had a little bit of a Helmet vibe going, starting out, didn't you? And then you kind of like got more experimental, or is that fair to say?
Helmet was an influence on us, and I think we definitely evolved as a band. I mean, when we brought the influence in, and bringing in Spam and Ron Felt too changed the sound of our music. And I think for me, I started to get more, I was involved in all kinds of music in school, and so I had some additional sort of classical influences that affected my way of singing. So I think, we evolved as a band, and I don't know if it was Helmet or, Tool became an important influence at that time. So for me, like, my vocals definitely were influenced by Maynard and that kind of weird sound that popped up at that time. And I think we became better musicians too. So our first recording was awesome. I think for us it was great. That Sister Knuckles tape with the weird green tape.
But it was Bluefinger on the tape too.
Oh yeah, well, I think some of the songs were.
They were. I see.
It all sort of blurred together for us. Yeah. It's not like.
So ultimately, it said that on the cover, but it was
yeah.
kind of started out as that. That was like the Sister Knuckles era.
Yeah, exactly.
I lied. What song was that? Was that?
I don't know.
Oh, that was great.
It's just so long for us ago. I'm surprised I remember anything. But yeah, no, I think we evolved as a band. I think we got better at playing together. I think we became better musicians. When we started, we didn't know shit. We didn't know how to really even play instruments or, so we sort of were growing up together through that musical process.
And Kory, you evolved into this rock star hair. It was amazing. I don't think anybody in town had that mop. That was a great musician's haircut or hairstyle. How did the band just kind of like eventually go out? Because didn't you go to college, Kory? Or I don't remember.
No, we were. I think there was again sort of a little bit of a division in the band, and a couple of the guys sort of went in a different direction. I was certainly fully intending on continuing to play music, and I stayed in college in Sioux City, so We were all there, but I think Spam moved to Seattle or somewhere. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, it just sort of, people kind of moved in different directions at that time. I don't really know how, I don't. It all feels like a haze.
What about you, Aaron? Did you keep playing in any other projects after Bluefinger?
Not really. I think I did a couple things here and there, but I ended up, well, because that kind of happened right around the time when everybody was finishing with high school, and I ended up at some point I started cooking, and then that became kind of this thing that was going to become a career path, and then all of a sudden you're working nights and you're working weekends, and I was just pretty much kind of and what's the word, I'm like enthralled in that whole development there. So I just didn't, I kind of didn't have time, or I didn't, at least I felt that I didn't want to make time because I probably didn't have the confidence or whatever.
Well, thanks both of you for coming to Louisville and talking about these important memories.
Be careful with what you